Okay, so today we're going to unpack something pretty heavy,
Yeah.
and we're diving into all the accusations surrounding Neil Gaiman.
Right.
This is the mind behind like Sandman, Good Omens, Coraline, stories that I think have really become a part of our cultural landscape.
For
I mean,
sure.
turned into movies, TV shows we've probably all seen at this point.
Absolutely.
But what happens, when the author of these beloved tales is accused of something so dark?
Right.
Um, and in this case, multiple women have come forward with these allegations of sexual assault. And the impact is, rippling far beyond just the literary world.
It really is. And it kind of begs the question that I think a lot of us are sort of grappling with these days, which is how do we reconcile the art that we love with, the potential darkness of the artists?
Exactly. And we've got a few articles here to kind of help us unpack all of this.
Yeah.
We've got an article from NDTV, one from USA Today, and then one from Variety, each of them kind of shedding light on the allegations and then, kind of what the fallout has been so far.
Right.
So how did this all begin? What are we actually dealing with here?
Well, so the story starts to kind of unravel back in July of 2024
Okay.
with Tortoise Media's podcast series called Master.
Okay.
And this is where 5 women initially came forward accusing Gaiman of sexual assault.
Wow.
Then, just a few days ago, New York Magazine published an article called There Is No Safe Word,
Okay.
featuring 8 women, some of whom were also in that initial Tortoise podcast, sharing their experiences as well.
Got it. And some of these accounts they're really deeply disturbing. And one that really stood out to me was Scarlett Pavlovich's story.
Yeah.
She details her time as a nanny for Gaiman's son in New Zealand,
Right.
including, alleged assault in a bathtub on his property.
Right. And I think what's especially unsettling about her account is that she talks about Gaiman instructing her to call him master,
Oh, wow.
referring to her as good little girl,
Huh.
and allegedly pressuring her into these degrading acts, really.
Yeah, and then she goes on to describe another alleged incident that took place in a hotel room where Gaiman allegedly assaulted her while his son was present, like playing on an iPad in the room.
Yeah, the power dynamic in that situation is really, it's a lot to unpack there, right?
Of course.
You have someone who's hired to care for his child,
Yeah.
and it just adds another layer of complexity, I think, to her allegations. And we have to really consider the vulnerability of her position there.
Absolutely. Pavlovich says she later signed a non-disclosure agreement for $9,200, but eventually went on to file a police report, though the case was ultimately closed.
Right.
And another woman who's only identified as Caroline in the article,
Okay.
she also shared a really disturbing experience in that New York Magazine article.
Yeah.
She alleges that Gaiman touched her inappropriately while they were in bed with his son.
To reach across his sleeping son to allegedly engage in that kind of behavior, that's just shocking.
It is.
And it speaks to, I think, a potential disregard for boundaries and the safety of those around him.
Yeah, and it's striking, too, because Caroline also signed an NDA.
Oh, wow.
This time for a much, much larger sum, $300,000.
Yeah, it's interesting.
It's a lot. Then we have Kendra Stout, who claims that she met Gaiman at a book signing when she was just 18.
Okay.
And according to her, their relationship later turned abusive.
And so Stout alleges that Gaiman raped her, even though she was saying no at the time because of a painful UTI.
Wow.
And what's really significant about this particular allegation is that she filed a police report as recently as October 2025.
Oh, wow.
So this brings a whole new level of legal scrutiny to the situation, for sure.
Absolutely. And then there's another woman, Catherine Kendall, whose alleged experience took place on Gaiman's tour bus.
A tour bus?
Yeah, she claims that he attempted to assault her there. And what I found really interesting about her account was that Gaiman later gave her $60,000 for therapy.
For therapy?
Yeah, and he said it was to, quote, make up for the damage.
That's strange.
It really raises a lot of questions about, his intentions and how he was perceiving that whole situation.
Right.
Now, it's really important to acknowledge at this point that Gaiman has vehemently denied all of these allegations.
Right.
And his representatives maintain that any interactions were completely consensual.
Okay.
And they argue that some of these interactions involved BDSM practices, which are, legal between consenting adults.
Yeah, sure.
However, the women involved deny any prior discussion or consent for specific BDSM activities.
Right, so you have a real clash of narratives here, like a classic he said, she said, which is so difficult to unpack.
It is, and this is where it gets really, really interesting for us
Yeah.
as, consumers of Gaiman's work.
As fans, yeah.
Because even without criminal charges, the accusations themselves have already had this substantial impact on his career.
Oh, for sure.
Projects are being put on hold, shows are canceled.
Yeah.
For example, Good Omens, which is that popular Prime Video series based on his work.
I love that show.
Yeah, it's ending after a single episode for season 3, and Gaiman's no longer involved in production at all.
Oh, wow.
And Disney has also paused their film adaptation of The Graveyard Book, another one of his really popular novels.
Wow.
And then Netflix went on to cancel Dead Boy Detectives, which is a show based on characters that he created.
Yeah, I mean, those are major projects that are being directly affected by these allegations, and it kind of raises the question, what is the entertainment industry's responsibility in situations like this?
Right.
Right. Is it innocent until proven guilty? Or is there a moral imperative to distance themselves from figures that are potentially problematic even before legal proceedings have wrapped up?
Right. These are the kinds of dilemmas that I think, we as fans, as consumers, we really have to navigate.
We do.
We love the stories, we love the worlds that he created, but can we actually separate the art from the artist, especially when the accusations are this serious?
It's a really personal struggle, I think, for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
Do you continue to support the work, knowing that these allegations exist? Do you boycott it entirely?
Right.
Or is there somewhere in between, some kind of middle ground where you can appreciate the art while acknowledging the potential darkness of the creator?
Right. And those are questions I think we're going to continue grappling with throughout this entire deep dive.
Yeah.
It's not about, coming up with these easy answers, but really trying to explore all the nuances and the complexities of this situation that really does affect us all in some way.
Yeah, absolutely.
It does.
It does. And it's not just like the big, Hollywood adaptations and these streaming deals. I mean,
Right.
these allegations have like a ripple effect that reaches so much further than that.
Yeah, I mean, think about it, like all the local bookstores,
Right.
the comic book shops, libraries, all these places that carry Gaiman's work.
Exactly. There are all these small businesses, often run by people who are so passionate about, the books that they sell. And now they're faced with this, like, really difficult choice,
Yeah.
Do they continue to, like, promote Gaiman's books? Do they keep stalking them, knowing that these accusations exist?
It's got to be a tough spot, especially if they have customers who are, really deeply affected by these allegations.
Of course. And then what about, the readers? The fans who have found, like, real solace and inspiration in Gaiman's stories.
Right.
It's heartbreaking to think that their experience of these works that they love might be tainted by this, like, shadow of doubt.
It's almost like a betrayal of trust in a way.
Right.
You invest so much of yourself in the stories you love, and then to discover something like this about the author, it can be so disillusioning.
Yeah, I mean, it forces us to confront this uncomfortable reality that the people who create the art that we cherish aren't always who we imagine them to be.
Right. And it's not just the fans.
Yeah.
We have to consider the impact on Gaiman's family, his friends.
Mhm.
Of course. They're caught in the middle of all of this, trying to reconcile their personal relationships with the weight of these accusations.
Yeah, it's a lot for them to deal with.
It is, and it speaks to, like, the broader impact of these kinds of situations, how they
Yeah.
extend so far beyond just the people who are directly involved,
Absolutely. It's like a stone thrown into a pond, You get those ripples that spread outward and
Yeah.
touch everyone.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. And then amidst all of this, you have J.K. Rowling, the author of Harry Potter, kind of adding her voice to the conversation.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she publicly compared these allegations against Gaiman to the Harvey Weinstein case,
Wow.
criticizing what she sees as the literary community's silence.
Interesting. Well, I mean, Rowling's comments bring up, I think, another layer of complexity in all of this because, the Weinstein case really sparked a global movement,
You did.
like a real reckoning in Hollywood and beyond.
For sure.
But the response to Gaiman's situation seems, I don't know, maybe a bit more muted. Maybe because the allegations are different. Right.
Or maybe because Gaiman himself occupies a different kind of cultural space,
Yeah, it's different for sure. It makes you wonder how we as a society, how we choose which accusations to amplify, which voices to believe,
Right.
and how those choices ultimately shape our perception of justice.
It's a really important conversation that I think we need to keep having, even if it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because that silence, like Rowling's pointing out, can sometimes be interpreted as complicity.
Exactly. So, where does all of this leave us as individuals trying to make sense of it all? We have these really troubling allegations, a complete denial from Gaiman, and a career that is already, taking some big hits.
Yeah, it's a lot to process, and I think it's okay to feel conflicted,
Yeah.
to not have all the answers right away. We're
Mm.
not judges, we're not on a jury, and it's not really our job to decide someone's guilt or innocence.
Right. But it is our responsibility, I think, as, consumers and as human beings to engage with these issues thoughtfully.
To listen to the people who've come forward and to hold space for how complicated this whole situation really is.
Right. And maybe through these, sometimes difficult conversations,
Yeah.
we can actually start to create a culture where accountability and justice are really paramount. A
Russ.
culture where victims feel empowered to speak their truth and, maybe a culture where we can move forward with just a greater understanding of all these complex issues.
I mean, this has been a tough deep dive, there's no doubt about it.
It really has.
And it leaves us, kind of with this lingering question.
Yeah.
How do these accusations, regardless of, the legal outcome, how do they change how we feel about Neil Gaiman's work?
It's a question that has haunted art for centuries, right?
Right.
Can we actually separate the creator from their creation? Should we even try? And it becomes even more challenging when the allegations are, this serious.
Right.
And when the work itself so often explores these themes of, good versus evil, light versus darkness.
It really makes you wonder if there was this darkness within the creator all along,
Yeah.
something that we were all blind to because we were so captivated by the stories themselves.
Right. It's such a jarring thought to think about all those people who found like real solace in these worlds that Gaiman created.
Right.
People who connected with his characters on such a deep level, and now that connection is potentially tainted.
It's like a book that you loved as a child that suddenly reveals these hidden, disturbing passages.
Right.
And it changes how you feel about the whole thing.
Completely changes the experience. And then for all those, aspiring writers and artists, creators who were inspired by Gaiman,
Right.
it's got to be a blow for them too.
It is.
It forces them to question, their idols,
Yeah.
to confront the possibility that even the people who bring beauty into the world can still have these dark sides.
Right. And for the people who work in, the publishing industry, the
Yeah.
bookstores, the libraries,
Yeah.
I mean, it creates a real dilemma for them.
It does.
Do they remove his books? Do they keep promoting them? How do they, navigate these ethical concerns?
Yeah, and how do they balance that with, the potential impact on their business?
Exactly. It's so
Yeah.
complicated.
It really is.
There are no easy answers. And, it really highlights the power dynamics within the publishing world, too.
For sure.
Authors, especially these really successful ones, I mean, they hold a lot of influence.
They do.
And it raises a question for society at large. Like, how do we hold individuals accountable for their actions?
Right.
Especially when those actions have these really far-reaching consequences for other people.
Right. It's a question that goes way beyond the literary world.
It does.
It's about power, it's about consent, it's
Yeah.
about believing victims, and it's about creating a culture where justice is truly served.
And that's really what it comes down to at the end of the day. And, we've only scratched the surface here.
Well, yeah.
We really encourage you to keep looking into this, to get more information, and to have these, sometimes challenging conversations.
I think it's so important to keep the dialogue going.
It is.
To practice empathy and to really commit to understanding so that we can move towards a future where we can appreciate art
Yeah.
without ignoring, how complicated human beings really are.
Yeah, well said. This has been a heavy one, but a really important conversation.
It has been.
And as always, we encourage you to keep going with the deep dive on your own. Seek out more information, form your own conclusions. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.